The autumn rain hammered against the tinted windows of the black Rolls-Royce as it crawled through downtown traffic. Marcus Chen barely noticed. His attention was locked on his phone, scrolling through acquisition reports for his latest corporate takeover. The numbers were good. Everything was always good in his world now. $52 billion tends to make life comfortable. His driver, James, slowed the car to a crawl near the farmer's market on Fifth Street. Marcus glanced up, annoyed at the delay. That's when he saw her. The world stopped. Elena. His ex-wife stood behind a weathered fruit stand, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a faded jacket he didn't recognize. But that wasn't what made his heart slam against his ribcage. Surrounding her were four small children, identical faces, maybe 3 years old, all bundling oranges into paper bags with tiny, clumsy hands. Quadruplets. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The phone slipped from his fingers onto the leather seat. 3 years. It had been 3 years since their divorce. 3 years since he'd chosen his company over their marriage. 3 years since he'd signed those papers without looking back. The math crashed into him like a freight train. James noticed his boss's expression in the rearview mirror. "Sir, are you all right?" Marcus couldn't speak. He watched Elena laugh at something one of the children said. Her smile warmed despite the cold rain beginning to soak through her jacket. She looked exhausted. Beautiful, but exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hands, once soft and manicured, now looked red and raw from the cold. "Pull over," Marcus whispered. "Sir, pull over. Now." Before you continue with this story, I need you to do something important. If you're enjoying this content and want more emotional, twist-filled narratives like this one, hit that subscribe button right now. We're so close to 10,000 subscribers, and your support means everything. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's grow this community together. Now back to Marcus and Elena's story. The Rolls-Royce glided to the curb 30 feet from the fruit stand. Marcus sat frozen, watching his ex-wife's world through the rain-streaked window. One of the little girls, wearing a pink jacket, tugged on Elena's sleeve and pointed at something. Elena crouched down, eye level with her daughter, listening intently before kissing her forehead. That gesture. Marcus remembered that gesture. Elena used to listen to him the same way, with her full attention, making him feel like the most important person in the world. Before the late nights at the office became every night. Before mergers and acquisitions replaced anniversary dinners. Before he became the man who put everything into building an empire and nothing into building a life. "Should I wait here, sir?" James asked carefully. Marcus didn't answer. He was counting. 4 children. 4. The financial implications alone were staggering. The medical bills for quadruplets, the childcare costs, and here she was, selling oranges in the rain. A well-dressed woman approached the stand. Elena's face brightened with hope as she held up a bag of oranges. Marcus watched the woman shake her head, not even slowing down. Elena's shoulders sagged for just a moment before she straightened again, her smile returning as she turned back to the children. Pride. Even now, even here, Elena carried herself with dignity. Marcus's hand moved to the door handle, then stopped. What would he say? What could he possibly say? Congratulations on the children that might be mine? Sorry I chose stock options over our future? The words felt hollow before they even formed. But one of the little boys, wearing a blue jacket that matched his sister's pink ones, looked directly at the Rolls-Royce, looked directly at Marcus. And for a heartbeat, Marcus saw his own eyes staring back at him. His father's eyes. His grandfather's eyes. The Chen family eyes that had looked out from portraits in his childhood home. The boy tilted his head, curious, then tugged on Elena's jacket and pointed at the car. Elena glanced over. Their eyes met through the rain and glass. The recognition hit her like a physical blow. Marcus saw it in the way her hand flew to her mouth, in the way she instinctively stepped in front of the children, in the way her whole body tensed, preparing for fight or flight. For 5 eternal seconds, they stared at each other across the distance. Then Elena turned away, gathering the children closer, her body language screaming one clear message: "Stay away from us." Marcus felt that rejection like a knife between his ribs. He deserved it. He knew he deserved it. But seeing her dismiss him so completely, so protectively, ignited something in his chest he hadn't felt in 3 years. Regret. James, find out everything about her, Marcus said quietly. Where she lives. How she's managing. Everything. But be discreet. I don't want her to know. Of course, sir. The Rolls-Royce pulled back into traffic, but Marcus twisted in his seat, watching the fruit stand disappear behind them, watching his past and possibly his children fade into the rain. That night, Marcus stood in his penthouse apartment, whiskey in hand, staring out at the glittering city skyline. His phone buzzed. James had been efficient. The report was devastating. Elena lived in a one-bedroom apartment in the warehouse district. She worked 3 jobs: the fruit stand, overnight cleaning at an office complex, and weekend shifts at a diner. The children attended a subsidized daycare. She had no car, no family support, her parents having passed away 2 years ago in a car accident. She was drowning in medical debt from the quadruplets' birth, which had been complicated, requiring weeks in the NICU, and she had never asked him for a single cent. Marcus's grip tightened on his glass. Pride. Stubborn, beautiful, infuriating pride. The same pride that had made her refuse his money during the divorce, insisting she wanted nothing from him. He'd been relieved then, eager to make a clean break. Now that relief tasted like ash. His personal lawyer, Robert, had added a note at the bottom of the report. Based on timeline, high-probability children are biologically yours. Recommend DNA testing and legal consultation regarding paternity and child support obligations. Obligations. The word felt obscene. These weren't obligations. These were children. His children. 4 little people who existed because of one last night together before the divorce was finalized. One night when grief and loneliness had pulled them together. One night he'd convinced himself meant nothing. How could Elena have gone through that pregnancy alone? Quadruplets were high risk. The fear she must have felt, the physical toll, and then raising them alone for 3 years while he'd been busy celebrating his company going public. Buying a private jet? Making the Forbes list? Marcus set down his glass and pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his photo gallery until he found what he was looking for. Their wedding photo. Elena in white, radiant and hopeful, him in his tux, young and arrogant, convinced he could have it all. What an idiot he'd been. His phone rang. His mother. Marcus, darling, are you still coming to the charity gala next week? Victoria Chen's cultured voice filled the line. I don't know, Mother. Something's come up. What could possibly be more important than the Chen Foundation's annual fundraiser? Marcus hesitated. His mother had never approved of Elena. Too common, she'd said. Not from the right background. When the divorce happened, Victoria had thrown a celebration dinner. I saw Elena today, Marcus said quietly. Silence on the other end. Then, I thought we agreed that chapter was closed. She has children, Mother. 4 of them. Quadruplets. They're 3 years old. Another pause. Marcus could practically hear his mother's calculating mind working through the implications. I see. And you believe they're yours? I know they're mine. I saw them. One of the boys has the Chen eyes. Marcus, you can't be certain from just looking. This woman clearly needs money. She could be manipulating you. Anger flared in Marcus's chest. Elena didn't even know I saw her. She's been raising them alone for 3 years without asking me for anything. This isn't manipulation. This is me finally facing the consequences of my choices. Consequences? Victoria's voice turned sharp. Your father and I built this company for you. We sacrificed everything so you could have opportunities. And you're going to throw it away for some woman and children who may not even be yours? They are mine, and I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally choosing what matters. You sound like your brother, Victoria said coldly. Look where his sentimental choices got him. Living in Oregon, running a bookstore, married to a yoga instructor. Is that what you want? Marcus thought of his younger brother, David. They hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since David walked away from the family business. But David had always seemed happy in a way Marcus never was. Content, at peace. Maybe David had the right idea all along. Marcus said softly. Don't be ridiculous. I'll send Robert to handle this situation discreetly. A paternity test, a reasonable settlement, an NDA. This doesn't have to derail your life. Mother, I'm not settling this with an NDA. These are my children. You don't even know that for certain. Then I'll find out. But either way, I'm not walking away from them like I walked away from their mother. Victoria's voice turned icy. If you pursue this, the board will question your judgment. Your father's legacy? Dad's been gone for 5 years, and with all due respect, his legacy is a company, not a life. I want a life, Mother. I want my family. Marcus hung up before she could respond. His hands were shaking. In 38 years, he'd never directly defied his mother. The Chen family operated on duty, tradition, and the unspoken understanding that the company came first. Always. But as Marcus looked out at the city he'd conquered, he realized something profound. He'd spent his entire life trying to live up to his father's expectations, his mother's ambitions, the family legacy. And in the process, he'd lost the only person who'd ever loved him for himself, not for what he could achieve. Elena had loved the man, not the empire, and he'd thrown that away. Not again. The next morning, Elena was setting up the fruit stand when a man in an expensive suit approached. She tensed, recognizing the look of lawyers and debt collectors. Miss Rodriguez, the man said politely. My name is Robert Chen. I represent Marcus Chen. Elena's blood ran cold. I have nothing to say to him or anyone associated with him. I understand, but Mr. Chen would like to discuss the children. No, Elena's voice was steel. Absolutely not. Ms. Rodriguez, please understand. You tell Marcus that I don't need his money, his guilt, or his sudden interest in playing father. Elena's hands shook as she arranged oranges, not looking at the lawyer. He made his choice 3 years ago. We're doing fine. Robert glanced at the worn fruit stand, the thin jacket Elena wore despite the morning chill, the shadows under her eyes. Fine was clearly a relative term. He's prepared to offer substantial financial support. I said no. Elena finally looked up, and Robert was struck by the fierce determination in her exhausted face. My children will never feel like they're obligations or charity cases. They'll never wonder if their father wants them or just feels guilty. Either he's all in, truly and completely, or he stays away. There's no middle ground. Not with my babies. Robert nodded slowly. I'll relay your message. But Ms. Rodriguez, may I speak off the record for a moment? Elena crossed her arms, wary. I've worked for Marcus Chen for 12 years. I've seen him close deals that would make your head spin. I've watched him build an empire from his father's company. But I've never seen him like he was yesterday when I showed him your living situation. He looked broken, genuinely broken. Whatever he was 3 years ago, I think he's changed. People don't change, Elena said bitterly. Sometimes they do, when they lose everything that matters. Robert handed her a business card. If you change your mind, call me directly. Not for legal reasons, just to talk. As he walked away, Elena's bravado crumbled. She sank onto the stool behind her stand, tears blurring her vision. One of the daycare workers was bringing the children in an hour. She had to pull herself together. But God, she was so tired. Tired of working 3 jobs. Tired of counting pennies. Tired of lying awake at night wondering how she'd pay for new clothes when the kids outgrew everything. Tired of being strong. The worst part of her had hoped Marcus would care. When she'd seen him in that Rolls Royce just for a second, her traitorous heart had hoped he'd step out, wrap her in his arms and say he'd made a terrible mistake, that he wanted his family. But Marcus Chen didn't make mistakes. He made calculated decisions, and he'd calculated she wasn't worth it 3 years ago. Elena wiped her eyes and stood up. The children would arrive soon. She needed to be strong for them. They were everything, her whole world, her reason for getting up every morning. A memory flashed through her mind, the night she'd found out about the pregnancy. She'd been terrified, alone in that clinic bathroom, staring at the ultrasound image showing 4 tiny heartbeats. The doctor had warned her about the risks, the complications, the astronomical costs. She'd called Marcus without thinking. His number was still in her phone, even though the divorce had been finalized 2 months earlier. He'd answered on the third ring. Elena? She'd opened her mouth to tell him, to say she was pregnant with his children. But before she could speak, she'd heard a woman's laugh in the background, sultry, intimate, and Marcus had said, "Can this wait? I'm in the middle of something." Elena had hung up without a word. That's when she'd known. He'd moved on. She was already forgotten, and she'd be damned if she'd trap him with an obligation he didn't want. So she'd gone through the pregnancy alone, 32 weeks of bed rest, emergency C-section at 34 weeks, 4 tiny babies in the NICU, fighting for their lives while she recovered from a surgery that had nearly killed her. Her mother had been there then, before the accident. Her father too. They'd helped with the hospital bills, the childcare, everything. And then one rainy night, a drunk driver had taken them both, leaving Elena truly alone with 4 6-month-old babies. She'd thought about calling Marcus then too, but pride and pain had stopped her. He'd made his choice. She'd made hers. They'd live with the consequences, except now he knew. And everything was about to get complicated. Elena didn't know that Marcus sat in his office, Robert's report on his desk, making his own calculations. But these weren't about money or obligations. These were about how to prove to a woman who had every reason to hate him that he'd changed, that he wanted more than to throw money at the problem, that he wanted his family. Marcus had built an empire by being strategic, patient, and ruthless when necessary. Now he'd apply those same skills to winning back what he'd lost. But this time, the stakes were infinitely higher than any corporate deal. This time, he was fighting for his children. And for the woman he'd never stopped loving. 3 days later, Elena arrived at the fruit stand to find it gone. In its place stood a construction crew. "What's happening?" she demanded, panic rising. "That's my stand. That's my business license location." The foreman checked his clipboard. "Sorry, miss. This whole block's been bought for redevelopment. All the vendors got notices last month." Elena's heart sank. She'd missed the notice. Between work, kids, and exhaustion, she must have missed it. "Where am I supposed to go?" The foreman shrugged sympathetically. "Don't know, sorry." Elena stood there as her world collapsed around her. The fruit stand income, small as it was, covered groceries. Without it, she'd have to choose between feeding her children and paying rent. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Rodriguez, this is Patricia from Sunshine Daycare. We've had an anonymous donation that covers your children's tuition for the next year." Elena's blood turned to ice. "Who?" "They wish to remain anonymous, but—" Elena hung up. She knew exactly who. Fury and desperation warred in her chest. She pulled up Marcus's office number from memory and dialed. "Marcus Chen's office," his assistant answered. "Put him on, now." 2 minutes later, Marcus's smooth voice came through the line. "Elena!" "How dare you?" she hissed, walking away from the construction noise. "How dare you go behind my back? I told your lawyer—" "The daycare donation wasn't me," Marcus interrupted, "though I wish I'd thought of it. The construction site wasn't me either. That's a city development project that's been in the works for 2 years." Elena stopped. "Then why did you have your lawyer approach me?" "Because I saw you. I saw them. And I can't unsee it, Elena. I can't unknow that I have 4 children and their mother is selling oranges in the rain." "That's not your problem." "Yes, it is." Marcus's voice intensified. "Maybe legally you can keep them from me, but morally, Elena, they're mine. You know they're mine. And I will spend every resource, every dollar, every connection I have to be in their lives, to be their father, not because I'm obligated, not because I feel guilty, though God knows I do, but because the moment I saw that little boy's eyes, my eyes staring at me through the rain, everything changed." Elena's throat tightened. "You don't get to do this, Marcus. You don't get to waltz back in and play hero after 3 years. Then tell me what I do get to do. Because I'm not walking away. I can't. Test me, Elena. Set the terms. Make me prove it. But give me a chance." Elena closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "You broke my heart. You chose your empire over us. Over me. I know. And I've regretted it every single day." Marcus's voice cracked. "I thought building something great would make me happy. Make me matter. But standing in a penthouse alone, staring at a city I conquered, I realized I'd traded everything that actually mattered for things that mean nothing. Please, one chance to prove I've changed. The desperation in his voice undid her. This wasn't the cold, calculating businessman who'd signed divorce papers without flinching. This was the Marcus she'd fallen in love with, vulnerable and raw. One dinner, she whispered, with all of us. You meet your children. We'll see if you can handle the reality of 4 3-year-olds at once. When? Tomorrow, 6 p.m. I'll text you the address. She paused. And Marcus, if you hurt them, if you disappoint them, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. Fair enough. Elena hung up and immediately called the daycare back. Yes, she'd accept the anonymous donation. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. But she'd find out who sent it, and she'd pay them back. Somehow. What Elena didn't know was that the donation had come from Marcus's brother, David. Robert had called him, explained the situation, and David had wired the money within an hour. Tell Marcus he's an idiot, David had said. But tell him I'm proud he's finally figuring out what matters. And tell him to call me. It's been too long. The next evening, Marcus stood outside Elena's apartment building, a bag of carefully selected toys in one hand, and his heart hammering in his chest. He'd consulted with a child development specialist about appropriate gifts for 3-year-olds. He'd read 3 parenting books in 24 hours. He'd even called David, who'd laughed and said the only preparation needed was love and patience. Marcus hoped he had enough of both. Elena opened the door and Marcus's breath caught. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair down around her shoulders. Still beautiful. Still the woman he'd loved. Still the woman he loved, if he was being honest with himself. They're nervous, Elena said without preamble. I told them they're meeting someone important. Elena, I need you to know something before I come in. That night you called me 3 years ago, right after the divorce. I know you hung up without saying anything, but I've never stopped wondering why you called. If you were trying to tell me something. Elena's face went pale. How did you? I saw the missed call log. I tried calling you back for weeks. You never answered. Marcus stepped closer. Were you going to tell me about the pregnancy? Elena's eyes filled with tears. I heard a woman laughing in the background. You said you were busy, and I realized you'd already moved on, that I'd be trapping you with something you didn't want. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. That was my assistant, Elena. She was showing me a funny video. There's never been anyone else. Not then, not now. Just you. It's always been just you. A tear slipped down Elena's cheek. You still chose your company over us. I chose wrong. But I'm choosing right now, if you'll let me. Elena wiped her eyes and stepped back, letting him in. Don't make promises you can't keep, Marcus. Children don't forget. Marcus nodded and stepped inside. The apartment was tiny but immaculate. Toys were organized in bins. Children's artwork covered one wall. A small kitchen table was set for 6, mismatched chairs pulled up around it. And in the living room, 4 pairs of identical eyes stared at him with curiosity and suspicion. 3 girls and 1 boy. Just as he'd seen at the fruit stand. The girls wore matching purple dresses that Elena had clearly made herself. The boy wore tiny slacks and a button-up shirt that looked second-hand but carefully pressed. All of them had Elena's dark hair and his eyes. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. These were his children. His. This is Marcus, Elena said softly. Can you say hello? Hello, they chorused, tentative. Marcus crouched down to their level, setting aside the toy bag. Hi, I've been really looking forward to meeting you. Your mom told me your names, but I want to hear them from you. Can you tell me who you are? The boy stepped forward first, bold and curious. I'm Matteo. Are you rich? Mama said you have a fancy car. Matteo, Elena warned. But Marcus laughed, the sound surprising even himself. I do have a fancy car. Would you like to see it sometime? Yes. Matteo's face lit up. Does it go really fast? Pretty fast, but not as fast as your mom says you run. Matteo grinned, pleased at the compliment. The girls were slower to warm up. The one in the middle, who Marcus would learn was Sophia, hid behind her sisters. But Isabella, the tallest by an inch, studied him with disconcerting intelligence. Why are you here? Isabella asked. Mama looked sad after the lawyer man came. Isabella, that's rude, Elena started. No, it's a fair question. Marcus met Isabella's eyes. I'm here because I made a big mistake. I wasn't there when you were born, and I missed a lot of your lives, and I want to fix that if you'll let me. If your mom will let me. What kind of mistake? Isabella pressed. Marcus glanced at Elena, who nodded slightly. Permission to be honest. I chose work over people I loved, Marcus said carefully. I thought being successful and important would make me happy, but it didn't. And now I want to get to know you and be part of your lives, if that's okay with you. Are you our daddy? Sophia asked suddenly, her voice so quiet Marcus almost didn't hear. The room went silent. Elena's face went white. Matteo and Isabella looked at their mother, then at Marcus, clearly connecting dots they hadn't considered. Marcus looked at Elena, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Marcus said softly. I think I am, if that's okay with you. Sophia considered this, then stepped forward and grabbed Marcus's hand. Okay, Emma at school has a daddy. Now we have one too. The simple acceptance broke something in Marcus. This tiny person had just given him the greatest gift he'd ever received, the title of father. You have sad eyes like Mama sometimes, Sophia observed, still holding his hand. The observation was so unexpected, so piercing, that Marcus felt his throat close. This tiny person had seen through him in seconds. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that make them sad, Marcus managed, but being here with you makes me feel better already. The fourth girl, little Lucia, suddenly rushed forward and wrapped her arms around Marcus's neck. Don't be sad, Daddy. We'll make you happy. Marcus held his daughter, this precious child he'd never known existed until 3 days ago, and felt tears slide down his face. Elena was crying openly now, too. Matteo looked uncertain, and Isabella still watched everything with that analytical gaze. Can we eat now? Matteo asked, breaking the emotional moment. I'm hungry. Elena laughed through her tears. Yes, let's eat. Dinner was chaos. Matteo spilled juice twice. Sophia refused to eat her vegetables until Elena employed some complex negotiation involving dessert and bedtime stories. Isabella asked Marcus 100 questions about his business, his car, his house, his favorite color, his favorite animal, whether he liked broccoli because she didn't, and Lucia insisted on holding his hand under the table, her small fingers wrapped around his, occasionally squeezing as if to make sure he was real. Marcus had never felt so overwhelmed and so complete in his entire life. After dinner, Elena put the children in the bedroom to watch a movie, giving the adults time to talk. But before she closed the door, Isabella grabbed Marcus's sleeve. You're really going to stay? She asked quietly. Marcus crouched down to her level. I'm really going to stay, I promise. Grown-ups break promises sometimes. Some do, but I won't. When I say something, I mean it. Isabella studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, you can be our daddy then. As if it were that simple. As if she'd interviewed him for a position and he'd passed. Marcus felt his heart expand in his chest. In the living room, Elena and Marcus stood awkwardly, the weight of 3 years and 4 children between them. They're incredible, Marcus said, helping Elena clear dishes. You've done an amazing job with them, alone, which you should never have had to do. It's been hard. Elena's voice was quiet. Some days I don't know how I'm going to make it, but they're worth everything. Marcus set down the plates he was holding and turned to face her. I want to help, Elena. Really help. Not just financially, though God knows I want to do that too. I want to be their father. Bedtimes and tantrums and school plays and all of it. Elena leaned against the counter, studying him. You say that now, but what happens when a business deal needs you in Tokyo for a week? What happens when being a father becomes inconvenient? Then the business deal waits, or it doesn't happen. I've spent 3 years building an empire. Now I want to build a family. If I have to choose, I choose them. I choose you. You don't get to choose me, Elena said sharply. We're divorced, Marcus. You made that choice final. Then I'll earn my way back, however long it takes. Elena laughed bitterly. You think you can just buy back everything you threw away? No, I think I have to prove every single day that I've changed, that I understand what matters, that I'm worth a second chance. Marcus stepped closer. I was a fool, Elena, a blind, arrogant fool. But seeing you in the rain, seeing our children, it woke me up. I don't want to be the man who has everything except what actually matters. Before Elena could respond, Lucia appeared in the doorway clutching a stuffed bear. Mama, Sophia won't share the blanket. Elena smiled, the tension breaking. Come on, let's sort this out. Marcus followed them to the bedroom, watching Elena effortlessly negotiate blanket territory between Sophia and Isabella. This was her world. Small, chaotic, beautiful, and he wanted to be part of it. As he left that night, Isabella grabbed his arm. Will you come back? Marcus crouched down, looking into his daughter's intelligent eyes. If your mom says it's okay, I'll come back. And I promise, when I say I'll do something, I do it. Okay. Isabella studied him a moment longer, then nodded. You can come back, but you have to bring Matteo a toy car. He really wants one. Marcus smiled. I can do that. And Sophia likes coloring books, and Lucia wants a stuffed bunny, and I want books about science. I'll remember all of that. Good. Isabella hugged him suddenly, briefly. Good night, Daddy. Marcus left the apartment in a daze. Daddy, they'd called him Daddy. 4 children he'd just met had accepted him into their lives with a simplicity and trust that humbled him. He couldn't let them down. Over the next month, Marcus became a fixture in their lives. He showed up for dinner twice a week, always bringing something thoughtful. Not expensive toys to buy affection, but meaningful things. Books for Isabella, coloring supplies for Sophia, a vintage toy car for Matteo he'd hunted down in an antique shop, a hand-sewn bunny for Lucia that he'd commissioned from a local artist. He learned their routines. Matteo needed to run around before bed or he'd never sleep. Sophia had nightmares and needed her nightlight. Isabella asked questions until she understood everything completely. Lucia attached herself to people with fierce loyalty and cried when they left. He learned what made them laugh, what scared them, what they dreamed about. But he also learned the reality of Elena's situation was worse than he'd imagined. The one-bedroom apartment meant the children slept in the bedroom while Elena took the couch. She worked her cleaning job from midnight to 6 a.m., then came home to get the kids ready for daycare before heading to her diner shift. She existed on 4 hours of sleep a night, and she was getting sick. Marcus noticed it first in the 3rd week, a cough that wouldn't go away. Elena brushing off his concern, saying it was just a cold. But by the 4th week, she looked genuinely unwell. Dark circles under her eyes, a pallor to her skin, a weakness in her movements. Elena, you need to see a doctor, Marcus said after one dinner where she'd barely eaten. I'm fine, just tired. You're not fine, please. Let me take you to my doctor, or any doctor, your choice. I don't have insurance that covers specialists, Marcus, and I can't afford to miss work. Then I'll pay for it. Consider it back child support. I told you, I don't want your money. This isn't about pride, Elena. This is about the mother of my children being too sick to stand up straight. Please. Elena looked like she wanted to argue, but another coughing fit stopped her. When she finally caught her breath, she was pale and shaking. Okay, she whispered. Okay. But before Marcus could make the appointment, Elena collapsed at the diner. One of her co-workers called the ambulance. They called Marcus second, finding his number saved in Elena's phone under emergency contact, something she'd forgotten to delete after the divorce. Marcus arrived at the hospital to find his children in the waiting room, terrified, being watched by a harried social worker who explained that with no other family, they'd need to go into temporary foster care while Elena recovered. No, Marcus said flatly. They come with me. The social worker frowned. And you are? Their father. And before you ask, yes, I can prove it. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing a photo of him with the children from the week before. DNA test results are being processed, but they'll confirm it. These are my children. And they're not going into the system. They're coming home with me. Sir, it's not that simple. There are legal procedures. Then we'll follow every single one. But they're not leaving my sight, not tonight, not while their mother is in that hospital room scared and alone. I'm their father. I have rights. And if I don't, we'll stand here and make it legal right now. Whatever it takes. It took 3 hours of paperwork, calls to lawyers, emergency family court hearings via video conference, and temporary emergency custody orders. But by midnight, Marcus was driving 4 sleepy, scared children to his penthouse, their small bags of belongings in the trunk. They stared wide-eyed at the sprawling apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "This is where you live," Mateo breathed. "It is. And for now, it's where you live too. Until your mama gets better." Isabella grabbed his hand. "Is mama going to be okay?" Marcus crouched down, gathering all 4 of them close. "The doctors are taking very good care of her. She has pneumonia, which is serious, but she's strong. She just needs to rest and get better. And while she does, I'm going to take care of you. We're going to be okay, all of us." That first night was a disaster. Nobody would sleep in the spare bedrooms. They insisted on staying together, so Marcus made a nest of blankets in the living room, and they all piled in, with Lucia glued to his side. "Is Mama going to die?" Sophia whispered in the dark. Marcus's heart clenched. "No, sweetie, she's very sick, but the doctors are taking good care of her. She just needs to rest and get strong again." "What if she doesn't come back?" Isabella's voice was small, vulnerable in a way Marcus had never heard. He gathered them close, these 4 precious pieces of his heart. "She will come back, I promise. Your mom is the strongest person I know. But while she's getting better, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." In the darkness, Lucia's small hand found his. "You promise?" "I promise." Mateo sniffled, trying to be brave. "Can we see her tomorrow?" "Yes. First thing in the morning, we'll go to the hospital. You can wave to her through the window and maybe video call with her. Okay?" "Okay," Mateo whispered. Marcus lay awake long after the children fell asleep. 4 small bodies pressed against him, trusting him to keep them safe. The weight of that trust was overwhelming. He pulled out his phone and texted his assistant, "Cancel everything for the next month. Family emergency. Forward anything urgent to the COO. Then he texted David. "You were right about what matters, thank you." His brother replied immediately, "Proud of you. Call if you need anything." Finally, Marcus pulled up his mother's number. He'd been avoiding her calls for weeks, but it was time. "Marcus," Victoria answered on the first ring. "It's past midnight. Elena's in the hospital. Pneumonia. The children are with me." Silence. Then softer than he'd heard her voice in years. "How are they?" "Scared. Brave. Perfect." Marcus looked down at Lucia, curled against his chest. "They're my whole world, Mother, and I'm not letting them go." "I see." Another pause. "Do you need help?" The offer surprised him. "What?" "You're going to need help. Marcus, 4 3-year-olds. I remember when you and David were that age. Your father and I barely survived, and there were only 2 of you. I'll manage. Don't be stubborn. I'll send Mrs. Patterson. She raised you boys. She'll know what to do." Mrs. Patterson, their childhood nanny. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, an olive branch. "Thank you, Mother." "And Marcus, I'd like to meet them, when things settle, if that's acceptable." "I'd like that." After they hung up, Marcus closed his eyes, holding his children close. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, they were together. They were safe. They were his, and that was enough. The next 2 weeks tested Marcus in ways he'd never imagined. He worked from home, laptop balanced on his knees while helping with remote preschool lessons. He learned to make macaroni and cheese. He negotiated sibling disputes over toy cars and dolls and who got to sit in which chair. He read the same bedtime story 17 times in a row because that's what Lucia needed to fall asleep. Mrs. Patterson arrived on day 3 and became his lifeline. She taught him how to manage 4 different bedtimes, 4 different food preferences, 4 different emotional needs. She was patient when he failed, encouraging when he succeeded, and loving with the children in a way that made Marcus remember his own childhood with fondness. Every morning they video called Elena. Every evening they drove to the hospital so the children could wave at her through the window, and slowly the children settled into their new routine. But they missed their mother desperately. On night 10, Sophia had a complete meltdown. She wanted Mama. She wanted to go home. She wanted things to be normal. She cried so hard she made herself sick, and Marcus held her through it, feeling helpless and heartbroken. I know, baby, I know. Mama will be home soon, I promise. You keep promising, but she's not here, Sophia sobbed. Marcus couldn't argue with that. All he could do was hold her and let her cry it out. Later, after Sophia finally fell asleep, exhausted from crying, Isabella found Marcus on the balcony. Are you sad, Daddy? She asked. Marcus wiped his eyes quickly. A little. It's hard seeing you guys hurt and not being able to fix it. Isabella climbed onto his lap. Mama says sometimes we can't fix things. Sometimes we just have to feel sad until the sad goes away. Your mama's very wise. She is. Isabella leaned against his chest. But you're doing good. Even when you don't know what you're doing, you're trying. Mama says trying is what matters. Marcus hugged his daughter close. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just didn't know me before. The simple truth of that statement hit Marcus hard. He'd missed 3 years. 3 years of Sophia's artistic talent emerging. 3 years of Isabella's brilliant mind developing. 3 years of Matteo's adventurous spirit. 3 years of Lucia's fierce love. He couldn't get those years back, but he could make sure he didn't miss any more. When Elena was finally released from the hospital, Marcus brought the children to pick her up. She emerged looking thin and weak, but alive. The children mobbed her, crying and clinging, and over their heads, Elena's eyes met Marcus's. Thank you, she mouthed. Marcus drove them all back to the penthouse. Elena protested, but she was too weak to argue effectively. Just until you're stronger, Marcus insisted. The kids are settled here. You need to rest. Please, Elena. For them. She finally agreed, too exhausted to fight. That night, after the children were asleep, Elena found Marcus on the balcony, staring at the city. You really did it, she said softly, joining him at the railing. You took care of them. Alone. I had help. Mrs. Patterson. My assistant handling work emergencies. Your friend Maria brought familiar toys from your apartment. Marcus turned to face her. But yeah, I did it. And it was the best 2 weeks of my life, even though it was also the hardest. Elena's eyes filled with tears. They adore you. Lucia talks about you constantly. Matteo wants to be just like you. Even Isabella admitted you're pretty cool, which is high praise. They're incredible, Elena, and that's all you. You raised them to be kind and smart and brave. I just got to borrow them for a while. Marcus, Elena hesitated. Why? Really? You could have just sent money, done the minimum legal obligation. Why put yourself through all this? Marcus moved closer, his hand cupping her face gently. Because I love them, and because I never stopped loving you. I was just too blind and stupid to see what I had until I lost it. You can't just say that and expect. I'm not expecting anything. I'm just stating a fact. I love you, Elena. I've loved you since the day we met in that coffee shop when you laughed at my terrible joke about corporate mergers. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving it if you'll let me. Elena closed her eyes, tears spilling over. You hurt me so badly. The day you signed those papers, you barely looked at me. Like our marriage was just another contract to close. I know, and I'll regret that moment for the rest of my life. Marcus's voice broke. But people can change, Elena. I've changed. These last 2 weeks living with our children, being their father every single day, taught me more about what matters than 38 years of chasing success ever did. I'm scared, Elena whispered. So am I. But maybe we could be scared together. Elena looked up at him, this man who'd broken her heart and then pieced it back together. I need time. And therapy. And a lot of long conversations. This isn't something we can just fix with words. I know we'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling. I'll sell the company if that's what you need. Don't be dramatic. I'm serious. What's the point of having an empire if I'm alone in it? I'd rather live in a 1-bedroom apartment with you and our children than in this penthouse alone. Elena laughed despite herself. You'd hate living in my apartment. Try me. They stood in comfortable silence, looking out at the city. Finally, Elena said, You can stay in our lives, as their father. We'll figure out custody and support and all the legal stuff. But Marcus, if you're going to be their dad, you have to be all in. No backing out when it gets hard. No choosing work over them. They need consistency. They have it. I'm not going anywhere. Okay, then let's try. Just try? That's all I can promise right now. But it's more than I thought I'd ever give you again. Elena pulled something from her pocket. A small ring box. I kept this. I don't know why. After the divorce, I should have thrown it away. But I couldn't. Inside was her wedding ring, the simple band they'd chosen together, before Marcus's company exploded and money stopped meaning anything. I kept mine too, Marcus admitted. In my desk drawer. I'd look at it sometimes and wonder what you were doing. If you were happy, if you ever thought about me. Every day, Elena whispered. I thought about you every single day. Marcus pulled a small box from his own pocket. Then how about this? Not asking you to marry me again. Not yet. But asking you to let us be a family while we figure out the rest. Inside was a ring, but not an engagement ring. A simple, delicate band with 5 small stones. One for each of us. A family ring. Everything else, we figure out as we go. Elena stared at the ring, her heart in her throat. This wasn't the man she'd divorced. This was someone new. Someone who'd been broken down and rebuilt into someone better. Therapy twice a week, she said. Both individual and couples. Done. And you talk to me before making major decisions. No more unilateral choices. Agreed. And if this doesn't work, if we can't make it work, we still co-parent respectfully. The kids don't suffer for our issues. They won't. But it will work, Elena. I'll make sure of it. Elena took the ring from the box with shaking hands. Okay. Let's try. Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because she was. 6 months later, Elena stood in Marcus's penthouse, now their penthouse, watching him chase 4 giggling children around the living room. He'd just gotten home from a board meeting, still in his suit, but he'd dropped his briefcase at the doors to play dragon with his kids. I'm going to get you, he roared, scooping up Lucia while she shrieked with laughter. This was their life now. Messy, loud, chaotic, and perfect. Marcus had indeed stepped back from daily operations of his company. His COO was now CEO, and Marcus served on the board but worked from home 3 days a week. The business world had been shocked, but Marcus didn't care about their opinions. Elena had enrolled in art school, finally pursuing the degree she'd abandoned. They'd hired a nanny to help during the day, but Marcus insisted on being present for bedtimes, school pickups, and weekend adventures. Their therapy sessions were hard. They dug into old wounds, faced painful truths, learned to communicate better. But they were committed to making it work, to building something better than what they had had before. Victoria Chen had met her grandchildren and, to everyone's surprise, had melted. She showed up weekly with thoughtful gifts and patient attention. She even apologized to Elena for her cold treatment years ago. I was wrong, Victoria had said stiffly, about many things, but mostly about what makes a good life. My son is happier now than I've ever seen him. That's because of you and these children. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. The apology had been awkward, but genuine. And slowly the Chen family was rebuilding itself around new values. Family first, love before duty, presence over presence. Marcus and Elena still argued sometimes. Old patterns tried to resurface, but they'd learned to talk through things, to prioritize each other, to remember what they'd almost lost. Mama, come play, Mateo called. Elena joined them on the floor, laughing as Marcus tickled Sophia. This family, this beautiful, imperfect, hard-won family, was everything. That night, after the children were in bed, Elena found Marcus in his study, looking at photos. Their wedding, the children as newborns, photos he'd missed but that Elena had shared with him. Recent pictures from their weekend at the park. Regrets? She asked softly. Marcus pulled her onto his lap. Only that I wasted 3 years. But maybe we needed that time. Maybe I needed to lose everything to understand what really mattered. Elena kissed him gently. I'm glad you figured it out. Me too. Marcus held her close, breathing in her scent, grateful for second chances and rainy days that changed everything. Me too. 1 year later, Marcus stood on the street where he'd first seen Elena again. The construction was long finished. A community center stood where the fruit stand had been, funded by an anonymous donation from the Chen Foundation. Inside, there was a free childcare program, a job training center, and a small grocery co-op that sold fresh fruit at cost to families who needed it. Elena joined him, slipping her hand into his. On her finger, alongside the family ring, sat a new diamond band. They'd renewed their vows last month in a small ceremony, with just family and close friends. The children had been flower girls and ring bearer, taking their duties very seriously. Isabella had even written part of the ceremony, insisting that promises needed to be specific and measurable. Thinking about that day? Elena asked. Every time I drive past. Best traffic jam of my life. Elena laughed. I was so angry when I saw you. I wanted to throw an orange at your fancy car. You should have. I deserved worse. Marcus turned to her, pulling her close. But I'm grateful you gave me a chance to earn my way back, to prove I'd changed. The kids forced my hand, especially Lucia. She decided you were hers from day one and refused to let go. Smart girl, she knew what she wanted. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the community center bustle with activity. Families coming and going, children playing, people finding help, finding community, finding hope. This was their legacy now, not just Marcus's business empire. They'd used his resources to lift up the neighborhood that had once been Elena's last resort. Inside the center, a mural covered one wall. Elena had painted it herself as part of her art therapy program. It showed a family of 6, holding hands facing the sunrise. 5 stones embedded in the painting represented each of them. The children loved pointing to it when they visited. Mrs. Chen, a young woman approached, pushing a stroller. I wanted to thank you again. The job training program helped me get work. I start next week. Elena smiled warmly. That's wonderful, Angela. You worked so hard. You earned this. Still, without this place, I don't know where I'd be. Angela glanced at Marcus. You two have changed so many lives. After Angela left, Marcus squeezed Elena's hand. You changed mine first. Stop being sappy. We need to pick up the kids from soccer practice. Isabella's soccer practice. Mateo has karate. Sophia has art club. Lucia has the science workshop. Elena groaned. How did we become those parents who need a calendar just to track activities? Because our children are brilliant and talented, and we can't say no to them. You can't say no to them. I have boundaries. You cried last week when Sophia made you a card that said "World's Best Mama." That's different. That was emotional manipulation through art. I'm powerless against it. Marcus laughed, the sound free and genuine. This was his life now. Debates about overscheduled children, tears over handmade cards, chaos and love, and the beautiful mess of family. They drove to pick up the kids, the same Rolls-Royce that had been there that rainy day. But now it had car seats and juice box stains and a collection of stuffed animals in the back. James still drove, but now he knew all 4 children's names, their favorite snacks, and their school pickup schedule. How's your grandson doing, James? Marcus asked as they drove. Better, sir. The surgery went well. Thank you for asking, and thank you again for the time off and the medical coverage. Family first, James, always. At the soccer field, Isabella was deep in conversation with her coach about defensive strategies. At 4 years old, she already understood the game better than most adults. Mateo was showing off his new karate moves to anyone who would watch. Sophia had paint on her hands and a proud smile, clutching her latest creation. And Lucia was explaining something about photosynthesis to a confused parent. They're showing off for you, Elena whispered to Marcus. They always do when you pick them up. Good. I like being someone worth showing off for. The drive home was loud. 4 children talking over each other, each demanding attention, each sharing their day's triumphs and disasters. Marcus listened to it all, this beautiful cacophony, and felt his heart swell. At home, while Elena started dinner, Marcus helped with homework. Isabella's math worksheet, which she'd already finished correctly but wanted him to check. Mateo's spelling words, which they practiced while doing silly voices. Sophia's art project, which required his careful appreciation and specific compliments. Lucia's science questions, which he had to Google half the answers to. "Daddy, why is the sky blue?" Lucia asked for the 100th time, even though she already knew the answer. She just liked hearing him explain it. "Because of the way light scatters in the atmosphere, Princess. Remember? We talked about wavelengths?" "Oh yeah, I forgot." She grinned, clearly not having forgotten at all. "Tell me again." Dinner was the usual organized chaos. Negotiations over vegetables, debates about dessert, Matteo spilling something, Sophia getting distracted by a drawing idea mid-bite, Isabella asking complex questions about current events she'd heard on the news, Lucia holding court, making sure everyone was heard and happy. This was their rhythm now, their life, their family. After dinner, while the children played, Marcus's phone rang. His mother. "Marcus, darling, I'm confirming Sunday dinner. Is Elena making that wonderful chicken dish the children love?" "Actually, I'm cooking this week, trying a new recipe." "You? Cooking?" Victoria's tone held amused disbelief. "My son who once burned water. I've learned a lot in 2 years, Mother. You should see my macaroni and cheese. The kids rate it 7 out of 10. "High praise indeed." Victoria's voice softened. "They're lucky to have you, Marcus. You've become quite the father." "I'm the lucky one." After they hung up, Elena appeared in the doorway, watching him. "Your mother's coming Sunday?" "With David and his family. Fair warning, our house is going to be very loud. It's already very loud." "Louder then." Marcus pulled her close. "But good loud. Family loud." Elena rested her head on his chest. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That we made it back from where we were. We almost didn't. If I hadn't seen you that day, if I'd driven past 5 minutes earlier or later, we might never have found our way back to each other. The universe works in mysterious ways. Rainy, traffic-filled, orange-selling mysterious ways." Elena laughed against his chest. "I can't believe I was selling oranges. I felt so defeated that day, like I'd failed at everything. You were surviving, doing whatever it took to feed our children. There's no shame in that, only strength. I'm glad I don't have to be that strong anymore. I'm glad I can share it with you. I'm glad you let me share it, that you trusted me again." They stood together, holding each other, while chaos erupted in the living room. Something crashed. Someone screamed. Multiple voices started talking at once. "Should we check on that?" Elena asked. "Probably." Neither of them moved. "Okay, now we should definitely check." They found Matteo and Isabella in an argument over a toy car, Sophia trying to mediate with a drawing she'd made, showing them taking turns, and Lucia crying because everyone was fighting. Marcus and Elena exchanged a look that said everything. This was parenthood. Beautiful, exhausting, wonderful, frustrating, perfect in its imperfection. "All right, team meeting," Marcus announced, using his CEO voice. 4 children immediately sat down, knowing that voice meant business. "What's the problem and how do we solve it?" Isabella spoke first, laying out her case with legal precision. Matteo countered with emotional appeals. Sophia suggested compromise. Lucia just wanted everyone to be happy. 20 minutes later, the crisis was resolved. The toy car would rotate every hour. A timer was set. A chart was made. Isabella insisted on documentation. "Crisis averted," Elena whispered to Marcus, "until the next one in approximately 15 minutes. Optimist, I give it 10. But the evening settled into calm. Baths were given, with the usual water everywhere, and battles over who got which towel. Pajamas were negotiated, with Sophia insisting on wearing her rainbow ones even though they were in the wash, requiring a backup plan and distraction tactics. Bedtime stories were read, the same book 4 times for Lucia, who refused to deviate from routine, a chapter book for Isabella, who was reading above grade level and liked discussing plot structure, a picture book about race cars for Matteo, and Sophia's own drawings, which she narrated with elaborate storylines. "Good night, Daddy," they each said as Marcus tucked them in. "Good night, my loves. Sweet dreams." "Will you be here in the morning?" Lucia asked, the same question she asked every night, even though the answer was always yes. "I'll be here in the morning. I'm always here. Promise? Promise. Satisfied, Lucia closed her eyes and her stuffed bunny clutched close. Marcus found Elena on the balcony, staring at the city lights. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned back against him. "You're good at this," she said softly. "Being a dad, being here. I see you with them, and I can barely remember the man you were before. That man was lost, broken in ways he didn't even understand. But finding you again, finding them, it fixed something in me I didn't know was shattered. We fixed each other. I was drowning, Marcus, working myself to death, barely keeping my head above water, terrified every single day that I wouldn't be enough for them. And then you showed up and threw me a lifeline, even when I didn't want to take it. Stubborn woman, persistent man." They smiled at each other. These two people who'd lost everything and found it again, who'd broken and healed, who'd learned that sometimes love gets a second chance. "I have something to tell you," Ilana said, turning in his arms. "I wasn't sure when to bring it up, but it feels right now." Marcus's heart skipped. "What is it?" "I'm pregnant." The world stopped. Again. But this time it stopped in joy, not shock. "You're... we're... another baby?" "Just one this time, thankfully. The doctor confirmed it yesterday. I'm 8 weeks along." Marcus pulled her close, his heart so full he thought it might burst. "A baby. Our baby. We get to do this together from the beginning this time. Are you ready for 5 kids? Because I'll be honest, I'm terrified. We'll figure it out, just like we figured out everything else. Together." Elena laughed, tears in her eyes. "The kids are going to lose their minds. In the best way." They stood on the balcony, holding each other, watching the city that had witnessed their fall and their rise, their ending and their new beginning. "Thank you," Marcus whispered against her hair. "For what?" "For giving me a second chance, for letting me be their father, for forgiving me when I didn't deserve it, for loving me despite everything. Thank you for fighting for us, for changing, for showing up every single day and proving you meant it, for being the man I always knew you could be." The next morning, they told the children at breakfast. The announcement was met with chaos, questions, and excitement. "A baby!" Lucia shrieked. "Can I name it?" "We'll discuss names as a family," Elena said diplomatically. "Is it a boy or girl?" Matteo asked. "We don't know yet. We won't find out for a while." "I hope it's a girl," Sophia said. "Then we'll have more girls than boys." "Or a boy," Matteo countered. "Then we'll be even." Isabella, always the analyst, asked the practical questions. "Where will the baby sleep? Who will take care of it? What about college funds and future planning?" "We'll figure all of that out," Marcus assured her. "But right now, we're just excited to have another addition to our family." "Cool." Isabella nodded, satisfied with the answer. "Can I research infant development? I want to understand the science." "Of course you can." The rest of breakfast was spent in wild speculation about the baby. Names were suggested, most of them absurd. Matteo wanted to name it Lightning McQueen, regardless of gender. Sophia suggested Rainbow or Sparkle. Lucia wanted to name it Bunny. Isabella proposed naming it after famous scientists. Marcus and Elena exchanged amused glances across the table. This was their life, chaos and joy and love, in the beautiful mess of a big family. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Marcus sat in the nursery they were preparing. It had been his home office, but he'd gladly given it up. His laptop and papers were now in the corner of their bedroom. Family took precedence. Elena found him there, sitting in the rocking chair they'd ordered, his hand on her still flat stomach. "Thinking about the future?" she asked. "Thinking about how different things could have been. If I'd driven past that fruit stand 5 minutes earlier, if I'd been too proud to reach out, if you'd been too hurt to give me another chance. But you didn't, and I wasn't. And here we are. Here we are." Marcus pulled her onto his lap. 5 kids, a business I barely run anymore, a wife I love more than anything, a life I never knew I wanted, but can't imagine living without. Any regrets? Just one, that I wasted 3 years. But I'm making up for it now. You are. Every single day you show up. You choose us. You prove that people can change, that second chances are real, that love can survive even the worst mistakes. I'll spend the rest of my life earning your trust, proving I'm worthy of this family. You already have, Marcus. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee you bandaged, every nightmare you soothed, every dinner you helped cook, every homework session, every soccer game. You've already proven it. Marcus kissed her, soft and sweet, full of promise and gratitude. I love you, Elena. I never stopped. I just got lost for a while. I love you too. Welcome home. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a hospital room, watching Elena hold their newborn son. The kids pressed against the window, waving excitedly, held back by Mrs. Patterson and Victoria, who'd insisted on being there for the birth. He's perfect, Marcus whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand. He is. And he gets to have something his siblings didn't. He gets to have both of us from day one. Marcus felt tears slide down his face. They all have both of us now. That's what matters. What should we name him? They debated for months. Isabella had presented 17 carefully researched options. Matteo had lobbied hard for superhero names. Sophia wanted something artistic. Lucia wanted Bunny Jr. But Marcus and Elena had made their decision. David, Marcus said, after my brother, because he reminded me that family matters more than anything. And Raphael, after your father. So he knows where he came from. David Raphael Chen, Elena smiled. It's perfect. The door opened and a nurse let the children in, supervised by both grandmothers. 4 small faces peered at their new brother with wonder. He's so tiny, Matteo breathed. You were all that tiny once, Elena said. Can I hold him? Isabella asked. Marcus carefully transferred the baby to Isabella's arms, showing her how to support his head. She stared down at her brother with fierce protectiveness already forming. I'm going to teach you everything, she promised the baby, and I'll make sure nobody ever hurts you. Sophia leaned in to study the baby's face. I'm going to draw you so many pictures. Your room will be covered in art. Matteo puffed out his chest. I'll teach you sports and karate and how to be brave. Lucia simply kissed the baby's forehead. Welcome to our family, David. We're going to love you so much. Marcus wrapped his arm around Elena, and she leaned into him. Their family was complete. 5 children, 2 parents, 2 grandmothers, an uncle's family who'd visit soon. A life full of noise and chaos and love. This is everything, Marcus whispered to Elena. It is. Victoria approached, her usual composure cracking as she looked at her newest grandchild. He's beautiful. Congratulations to you both. On everything. The baby, yes, but also on building this remarkable family. Thank you, Mother. No, thank you. Victoria's eyes were wet with tears. For showing me what really matters. Your father would be proud. Not of the business, though he would be, but of this, of the man you've become, the father you are, the husband you've become again. This is his real legacy, family. Marcus hugged his mother, something he hadn't done in years. I wish Dad could have met them. He'd have spoiled them rotten. Victoria smiled through tears. As I intend to do. That night, we're back at home with the baby sleeping in the nursery and the other children finally settled after their excitement. Marcus and Elena collapsed on the couch. 5 kids, Elena said, half laughing, half crying. We have 5 kids. We do. Are you panicking? Completely, you? Absolutely, but we'll figure it out. Together. Always together. They sat in comfortable silence, exhausted but content. Through the baby monitor, they could hear David's soft breathing. From the children's rooms, the occasional whisper and giggle as they were too excited to sleep. This was their symphony, their beautiful, chaotic, perfect life. Marcus thought back to that rainy day 2 years ago, the day he'd frozen in his car, watching his ex-wife sell oranges with 4 children he hadn't known existed. The day that changed everything. If someone had told him then where he'd be now, he wouldn't have believed it, that he'd step back from his company, that he'd learned to make macaroni and cheese and braid hair and negotiate bedtime, that he'd find more satisfaction in a 4-year-old soccer game than in closing a billion-dollar deal, that he'd fall in love with the same woman all over again, deeper and truer than before. that he'd understand, finally, what it meant to be rich. Not money in a bank account, not properties or cars or power, but children's laughter, a wife's smile, tiny hands reaching for his, voices calling him Daddy, love given and received, second chances taken, mistakes corrected, lives built not on success, but on presence. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked, noticing his distant expression. "That I was the richest man in the city before, but I was also the poorest. And now it's reversed. We don't have as much money, but we have everything that matters. We're not exactly poor, Marcus. We still have the penthouse and enough money for 5 college funds. You know what I mean." "I do." Elena kissed him softly. "And I love that you finally understand it." "I love you," Marcus said. "Thank you for that rainy day, for being in exactly the right place at exactly the right time, for giving me a chance to fix my mistakes." "I love you too. Now come on, let's get some sleep before the baby wakes up for his feeding." They headed to bed, passing the nursery where David slept peacefully, in the rooms where their other children dreamed. Their family, hard-won and deeply cherished. As Marcus drifted off to sleep, holding Elena close, he smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. 5 kids meant 5 times the chaos, the worry, the exhaustion, but it also meant 5 times the love, the laughter, the joy. And that was a trade he'd make every single time. The billionaire who'd frozen after seeing his ex-wife selling oranges with quadruplets had shocked her by choosing love over pride, family over empire, presence over success. He'd torn down the walls he'd built and rebuilt himself into someone worthy of the gift he'd been given, a second chance, and he'd spend every day of the rest of his life proving he deserved it.